Well, I have with me returning guest critic Greg Hill sitting next to me, and I see that we're decorated with some of the worst posters, movie posters of the year, so this must be the top 5 worst films of 2010, as brought to you by guest critic Greg Hill and critic Nick Yacobucci for RealScreenReviews.com. Well, I guess we can just get right to it. You got some honorable mentions you can throw out there before we start the countdown?
Not really.
I did. I brought some. This was a very tough list. The top 5 movies, the top 5 best movies of the year, I had narrowed down to about 7 or 8, and it was tough putting the top 5 together. I had a list of about 20 movies that were the worst movies of the year, and that was actually pretty tough narrowing it to 5. But some of the ones I have, The Last Airbender. Over here, just a terrible, terrible film. Little Fockers, which, as I think I said in my review for that one, all that movie accomplishes is wasting the afternoon of the viewer. Splice with Adrian Brody. My Soul to Take, the return to horror by the horror master Wes Craven, which you can skip entirely. And how about Sex and the City Part 2 for taking a great show and a great first film and totally ruining it. So. As that,
all right.
Well, we'll get right to it then. You know what? I'll start with Greg's top 5 worst film of 2010. Let's see here. What do we got? Oh, geez. The Hereafter with Matt Damon, I want to say.
Matt Damon. And
Clint Eastwood film.
Clint Eastwood has really shown that he's a great director, and with all the hype that this movie got, it was just so awful. And... You know, Matt Damon is a great actor, as we said in the last review, and it was,
just nothing happens. It's just such a long movie, and talk about depressing. I mean, it really is depressing, and I didn't give it that bad of a review because I think it succeeded in what it tried to be, but it was, I've talked to many people, and no one really had a good word for The Hereafter, except that maybe it's going to get better in The Hereafter.
Yeah. It's, Clint Eastwood has gone from the top of the barrel to the bottom of the barrel, so hey, Clint, you just think there's nowhere to go but up.
All right, let's get to my top 5 worst
Number
films.
5 worst movie of 2010 is... The American.
The American with George Clooney, where he plays an international assassin. But they actually should have went for the original title of this movie, which would have been Cure for Insomnia. Because if you can't get to sleep, just put this movie in and you will be out like a light within 10 minutes. Nothing happens in this film. Actually, I had guest critic Debbie D'Angelo with me on this, and she gave it no stars. I've talked to other people that have seen the film. They've given it, which would be the equivalent of no stars. I actually gave it, I think, 1 star or a half of a star. It was just brutal to sit through. It's one of those movies, when it ends, that you look at yourself and say, why did I watch this movie, and why didn't I get up and leave an hour ago? You know what I mean? It's just a terrible, terrible film. Please, skip it. It just came out on DVD last Tuesday. Skip it. We'll go right now to Greg's number 4 worst film of the year, and that is Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. I'll tell you, I couldn't be in more agreement with you on this one.
And I think in the best of review, you were talking about The Social Network and Jesse Eisenberg, and I talked about how I was a big fan of Jesse Eisenberg. Michael Cera, in my opinion, is not really a credible actor, unless it's that one role that he played in like Superbad and pretty much every movie.
I like Michael Cera, but to touch on the point that he's making is, I originally was interested in Michael Cera when I saw him on the TV show Arrested Development, and he played Jason Bateman's son, George Michael, and every character that he's talking about is a variation of George Michael, the character from Arrested Development, that same dorky, but yet you like him kid that he plays. Yeah. You got to do something different, and not to mention the whole storyline of Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. It was like they were telling a story, and then all of a sudden we just went into video game world, and then we went back to real life, then we went into video game. It was a big mess, and I didn't think it worked at all.
It's like at some point you've got to choose what kind of movie you want to make. Do you want to actually tell a story, or do you just want to have an effects show? And they really couldn't decide. It was like the movie had ADD.
I agree. Very well put. Very well put.
So, and with that, Nick's number 4 worst movie of 2010 is Jonah Hex.
Jonah Hex. Now, this is where I'm going to get into my definition of what I consider one of the worst films of the year, because a lot of people say to me, Piranha 3D. I don't consider Piranha 3D. I saw that. That's not one of the year's worst films, in my opinion, because that movie is attempting to be cheesy and campy, and it succeeded in that. You take a movie like Jonah Hex that had like an $80 million budget, a big director, John Malkovich, Josh Brolin, Megan Fox, and it is just a waste of time. And it also solidified the fact that the only reason that Megan Fox is even put into films is so they can spray her down with water, make her look like she's perspiring, and then film that and put it on screen. I've often wondered, why isn't she just a Victoria's Secret model? Because she's not a credible actress. She brings nothing to any of the Transformer movies, anything to Jennifer's Body, which that didn't make the list because I didn't see it. But this is just a horrible film. Jonah Hex, it's the definition of horrible movies when Hollywood takes a huge budget and a really decent cast and they can't produce anything with it. So
yeah, it's just kind of sad to see that Hollywood is, so desperate for ideas that they'll scrape the bottom of the barrel for comic books that nobody's really even heard of unless you're really into comic books.
Unless you're really into Jonah Hex comic books.
Yeah, and that they're giving these movies these huge budgets and everything. It's kind of sad to see.
And the movie was 75 minutes, and if you're wondering, that's 5 minutes shorter than Beauty and the Beast, and Beauty and the Beast had to be drawn. Drawn by hand. Okay, we'll get to Greg's number 3 pick for the worst film of 2003. The Last Airbender. What a shock.
Wow! Who'd have thought that would have been on there? What a piece of crap.
This is just a piece of junk. We're going to try and count how many times we say the word crap in this thing.
I think that's the first time for me.
I think.
But, oh my gosh, just, M. Night Shyamalan shows again that since The Sixth Sense, and I really wasn't a big fan of The Sixth Sense, it's been a downward spiral.
Yep.
It's like he's got amnesia and forgot how to make a movie that people like.
Now, my big gripe when I saw this movie, The Last Airbender, was for a year, they had previews for a year on this movie, and they made it look like this was the next Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, that this is like a very mature martial arts story. And then I get into this movie, and I'm watching it for 20 minutes, and it's from Nickelodeon Films, and then I come to realize that it's based on a cartoon from Nickelodeon called Avatar: The Last Airbender. But the thing I think is really funny is they leave you with a sequel ending. They leave you with, because he's the master of air, but then there's also water, fire, and something, and earth, I think. And they leave you with, there's going to be 3 more stories. And I think I said, somebody's going to have their head examined if they think somebody's going to make 3 more of these movies, because this was just a giant piece of dung. Yeah. There, I didn't say crap. I said dung. But it was just a complete waste of time.
Yeah.
No, is it me or no you? Yes.
Is it me?
No, it's him. That's right.
Yeah.
I'm losing track over here.
We're just having so much fun talking crap about these movies. Nick's number 3 worst movie of 2010.
I can't even remember.
Again, these are protected by PricewaterhouseCoopers.
Price Waterhouse, the people that keep the Academy Award nominations and results secured. We hired them. They hung out in my apartment all day just to keep these safe.
They wouldn't even let me in at first. But the number 3 worst movie, Repo Man.
Just god-awful. Can you say god-awful? I can say god-awful. How many Academy Award winners does it take to make this piece of junk? I'm sorry, Jude Law didn't win the Academy Award, but Forrest Whitaker did win the Academy Award. Jude Law's been nominated for Best Actor, I think, more than a few times. A very, very credible actor, a very, very talented actor. I don't know where this movie came from, and I remember reviewing it with Sean almost a year ago, and Sean brought up the fact of how at the end there's this bloody, graphic sex scene, and they're covered in blood, and I don't know what the filmmakers were trying to prove or what they were even thinking, and I don't want to know. It was just a giant waste of time and a giant waste of talent.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what's going through these actors' minds as they're reading a script with the title of Repo Man, and you're reading about, at the end of this movie, about this, gory sex scene.
It's just
what's going through your mind when you're accepting a role like this? I just don't know.
Probably the money, I think. Probably. The paycheck, because I don't know what else it could be. I hope they got paid well, because this did nothing to bolster their careers, I'll tell you that. It is just crap.
Yeah, and I don't know what there really is to offer from this movie. I don't know where people come up with this stuff.
I would say if you do watch the movie Repo Man, it's one of those movies that when it's over, you will say, I wish I had my $3 back. It really is that bad. So I can't stress enough to just steer clear of Repo Man. All right. Number 2, we're getting down to the nitty-gritty on the worst films of the year, and Greg's is, surprisingly, Red with Bruce Willis and Morgan Freeman. You really didn't like it that much, huh?
Yeah. I mean, that's another one like Hereafter that was hyped a lot, and for the cast that it had with Bruce Willis and Morgan Freeman, Helen Mirren and John Malkovich, you really would have expected a better film, but going into this one, it was very entertaining from a comedy standpoint.
Yeah.
But really, I walked out of the theater disappointed, that really wasn't worth it.
I can absolutely see where he's coming from with this one. I don't think I disliked it as much as you did. I thought, but once again, I totally understand. With all these talented actors in this, how could it really just be average? How could it really just be okay? Wouldn't it have to be, at least a little farther up the ladder? Wouldn't it have to be just a little bit better? And I think a lot of times you do leave the theater and you're just out and out disappointed. Like, how did this happen? And I guess I see your point. Like I said, once again, I don't think I hated it as much as you did, but I can definitely see where you're coming from. It really wasn't anything I'm going to run out and see again. It's nothing I'm going to go run out and purchase. But I don't.
$5 bin at Walmart, maybe. But that's about it.
All right.
Are we over to me?
Yes, we're over to you.
We're over to
my
me for
number 2.
Number 2, worst movie of 2010, and that is Skyline.
This is one of the worst films I've seen in years, not just 2010, probably going back to the year 2000. This is a blatant and utter ripoff of Independence Day, only Independence Day was a good movie, and this is a bad movie. Greg? He's trying not to swear. I don't know what I can
say about this movie. Yeah, we can't swear.
We're not allowed to swear. No profanity.
Really, this movie is just...
It's almost indescribable.
It kills your brain cells. Sitting there watching it,
you can feel yourself getting dumber.
Yeah. I think this is another one that they could have renamed, like The American, they could have renamed it The Cure for Insomnia. Because I was fighting the urge to go to sleep, because really, this movie is crap.
It is really absolutely nonsense from start to finish. And do yourself a favor, and once again, don't watch it.
Don't watch it on TV, and don't waste your DVR space.
Okay.
Oh, my goodness.
Greg's worst film of the year. Something tells me I know what this is going to be. Something tells me we're going to be talking about the same movie again.
Deja vu, maybe?
And that is Skyline. To pick up right where we left off. What can I say?
Hey, I figured we'd want to insult it some more, so I knew I would.
Coming off the heels of Skyline, we now have Skyline. Yeah. I'll tell you, when you have two independent minds of just average people sitting here, and we both went and saw this movie, and we both sit here and say, steer clear, please. This is one of the movies I say, I spent the $7, $8, $10. Please, save your $7, $8, $10. Yeah. Do not go see this.
I only paid $5, and I'm still saying, stay away. Don't even pay $5 for this movie. Don't even go pay $3.
And he actually wrote the Attorney General to try and get his money back from the studio.
Yes, I did. I wrote the Surgeon General trying to get them to put out a warning that this movie will cause some kind of disease and death. They didn't buy it.
That's because they didn't see it.
They didn't see it. They didn't waste their money like I did. So,
well, let's count down Nick's absolute worst film of the year.
Nick's
wrap this up.
Number one worst movie of 2010.
Didn't have to think twice.
The Killers.
With Ashton Kutcher and Katherine Heigl. And I'll tell you, this is the worst film of the year. I would even say it's even a little worse than Skyline. This movie is so ludicrous, it's not even remotely believable. The only thing I can say that saves this entire film is the French Riviera looks absolutely gorgeous, and they filmed the French Riviera. It looked beautiful. Other than that, another wasted performance from Ashton Kutcher. You have Tom Selleck in a supporting role. Normally I love Tom Selleck, just terrible. Katherine Heigl, terrible. In the end, the explanation that's given to us about this movie is so ridiculous that anyone with the IQ higher than 2 is going to have a hard time believing it. It's just a waste of time. It's just a waste of talent, and it's a waste of money for anybody that goes to see it. So I would tell you, whatever you do, steer clear of The Killers with Ashton Kutcher and Katherine Heigl. I will say she's a strikingly lovely lady, but that's about where the compliments end when it comes to this film.
Yeah.
So, well, Greg, I thank you so much for being here and tallying up the worst of 2010. Now, we've done our best to try and help you out there in the land of the audience to to shy away from these movies that you just don't want to see, that you just don't want to spend your hard-earned money or your time viewing these. So, once again, Greg, thank you so much for being here on RealScreenReviews.com and counting down the best films of the year. And Greg will be back in about 2 weeks to review The Green Hornet.
The Green Hornet.
Looking forward to it.
I think that's going to be a fun one.
I think it's going to be very fun, too. I think it's going to be a really, really fun movie, and I can't wait to sit down with you once again and review it. So,
yeah, me too, Peter Griffin.
And I guess we'll end this with, and remember, people,
we're not always right,
but only when it comes to the movies.
And thank you for your attention.